Hey everybody at home, and welcome to another great episode of Aqua Kids. I'm Isabel.
And I'm Molly, and today we're visiting the Ellie Schiller Homosassa Springs Wildlife State Park.
That's right, and we're going to get a chance to see some of the really cool animals that live here.
And we're going to team up with Dr. Mike Walsh to learn what they're doing to help wild manatee populations battle the cold temperatures that Florida's been facing this year. It's a little chilly today.
It is.
But are you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
The winters of 2010 and 2011 have been extremely cold, particularly in Florida, the winter home of the West Indian manatee. This year, scientists have documented over 600 manatee deaths due to cold exposure. To help, several organizations supported the Ellie Schiller Homosassa Springs Wildlife State Park in the decision to open the gates to their warm springs to let the animals reach warmer water.
Now we're here with Dr. Mike Walsh, and Mike, there have been quite a few organizations involved in this, so tell us what the state, the park, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, it's the FWC I guess, what they're doing to help these manatees battle these cold temperatures here.
Well, what they've done here has been very unique is that for many years, actually, this spring has been closed to the outside manatees. That doesn't mean they haven't been getting some warm water coming underneath this bridge, but this bridge separated wild from animals that were maintained in the park. This year, they've opened up through these gates in front of us the ability for the wild manatees to get closer to the springs, which increases the amount of area that the manatees have available. So the ones from here can move into here, and more can come from the outside and move into where these are, which will give them respite from some of the cold.
So when the temperatures get too cold for the manatees, where do they go and what do they do?
They've really only got two choices. They either go to a warm water source that's natural, or they go to a warm water source that we've made, and that means power plants that have been around for a number of years. The difficulty is, as the number of manatees has increased, which is what we all hope, we're going to be a little squeezed on what we can provide on the different coast. On the East Coast, unfortunately, there aren't as many springs. This is perfect place, as we're seeing here, for an animal to go to when it's cold, because they get into 70+ degree water. That's worthwhile. On the East Coast, if a power plant goes down, if it goes out of service, that means generations of manatees who thought that was natural, it's just no longer there, and they're in real trouble.
So what does that mean in terms of numbers over these past 2 years? How can we compare these years to past?
Well, if you look at what happens generally for cold stress, animals can be affected but not necessarily die from it. So we'll see a lot of young animals, particularly ones that were just weaned, get a lot of skin problems. Those are the ones most susceptible to cold. When it gets severely cold like it has these last 2 winters, that means everyone's at risk. Adults can die very acutely. When the water gets in the 40s and the 50s, that can be death for a manatee if they don't get to a warm water site. What we're looking at from a numbers perspective is if you saw 1 or 2 dozen in a typical year that die from cold, often an animal who doesn't know what to do. Now we're looking at, over the last year, 260+ animals. That's a large, large number, and it means that we've got to be very cautious in how we balance what we do with them in the wild, because Mother Nature can throw us some curves that we just don't expect and can't do anything about.
Now, Dr. Walsh, the manatees that live here have a slight advantage because their home is this natural spring with warm water, but they still do develop some health problems. And that's your job as a veterinarian here, that when you're contracted in to see what these health problems are. So let's go take a look and understand your thought process when trying to treat some of these animals.
That'd be great.
Cool, thanks.